All right, hello and welcome to this week's Thursdays on the Stoop. Today we have Trains of Thought with Jackie Torres. Jackie Torres is an educator, poet, and theater practitioner whose work focuses on art as a tool for organizing and education, a method of cultural preservation, and a ritual of healing. Their work is always dedicated to those in their respective communities: Black people, QTGNC people, disabled people, Caribbean people, and the visions for the future they conjure and conspire to make material. Thank you for being here. I'll turn it over to Jackie.
Thank you. I was just changing my pronouns really quick. Hi, I'm Jackie. I'm really glad to have all of you here. The weather really turned out excellent because this is just like pure light from my window, no additional lights. We love that. It's feeling like a really good sort of vibe, sort of energy. I'm really excited to be here. I'm really glad to be able to share this workshop with you. This is something that I first started developing in 2021, and it's taken on a lot more of a life. It's gotten a lot more specific. It's developed a lot of new tools. So some of it might seem kind of adjusted for this format because it initially and in its first iteration was in person, and we utilized a lot of performance methods and a lot of like theater games and theater you know activities and things like that to be able to kind of help generate some writing. But in light of that, obviously because we're here, yeah, adapting that as we can to sort of this virtual format, and I think that it works really well also in this format. So I'm excited. This is the inaugural virtual formatting of this workshop. So thank you for being here for the, start of that. It's very exciting. I will begin. Let me just share my screen really fast. Excellent. Cool, cool, cool. You make sure you see what we got over here. And I'm going to start hitting present. Okay, great. Hello. Hi. Welcome. As I've said, this is Trains of Thought. It is a journaling workshop. My name is Jackie. You heard my bio. We know what we're here for. Great. Excellent. So from a descriptor standpoint, strictly, this workshop is a journaling workshop to demystify writing as a strictly intellectual endeavor or mental activity, and to unlock possibilities for communication, not only for writing, but also for self-awareness and expression absent of self-editing. The aim is to engage with momentary or half-formed thoughts or ideas and follow them through to their logical conclusion via stream of consciousness processes. So all of that essentially is kind of me wanting this to be a journaling workshop specifically, because the thing that I have continuously encountered when it comes to the students that I work with, whether it be, the high school students that I used to work with, whether it be with other adults, whether it be with other artists, is kind of a general struggle to overcome sort of self-editing, and how that prevents people from kind of really getting to the core of what it is that they want to say. So this essentially from strictly from like a forum standpoint is to help us develop new tools that we can utilize to be able to get past that sort of editing brain, that the editing brain in the early part of the writing process, where we should not even be worried about it. We should just be kind of generating whatever, whether it's the best thing we've ever written, whether it's absolutely horrible, we'll never share it with anybody else. It just needs to be as raw as possible before we get into the editing phase. But this is initially for generating material essentially. And also, but why are we here in this like broader sense? In the context of the world and the circumstances that we find ourselves in, because we all know all of the things that are happening. We all know the conditions that we exist in. We all know that we exist in this world. And as a result, the work that we generate, the things that we write about, what we talk about, what we reflect on, how we understand ourselves in relation to it and in the context of it, is basically what influences our writing, right? So in the context of the world and circumstances we find ourselves in, we are often conditioned into questioning our interpretations of our own experiences, and not in ways that are healthy or self-aware. How does a private writing practice help us interpret our emotional landscape and aid our ability to show up in the world or properly assess and initiate plans of action. How do we practice writing as a collective practice? How can we utilize the symbols at our disposal to urge our crafting of the language we use when words alone, typed or written, refuse to come and might not even be enough? So how do we utilize, as people who are obviously interested in language, as someone who communicates primarily through language, right? I'm not a painter for a reason, but how do we also recognize ourselves as part of the grand scheme and utilize tools and symbols and images and I mean just all types of experiences that are at our disposal that surround ourselves to be able to influence our writing, as opposed to coming strictly from this like intellectual place, right? And the idea being that we get to a certain level of comfort with ourselves to the point that we are able to name what we want, what we don't want, where we get really specific about what it is that we're trying to say. And hopefully that illuminates ways for us to move forward, whether that be interpersonally, whether it be in a broader context in the grand scheme of like trying to, you know, make a difference in the world somehow. Maybe that's at work. Maybe that's however that looks, right? So the reason there's a double tarot card here is because we're going to be playing with the concept of archetype, which I find to be really helpful. But we will get to that in a minute. So the goal for today, essentially, from a very basic standpoint, is the aim is to provide all of you with non-traditional ways of generating new writing, even if the writing is strictly private. So it doesn't necessarily have to be something that you are going to present. It can be, that's great, we love that. But even if it's just for you, that is still worth something. And I think that in terms of a lot of writing things are not given value if it's not for someone to see. And it's okay if you write things that are literally just for you, because that helps you in your personal experience, that enriches your personal experience, and that in and of itself is worth something, right? So that the ideas that you engage with are a reflection of your entire being and a motivator towards personal understanding and hopefully related action, but also so that we're kind of somatically dealing with other parts of our experiences. We're not strictly, and I say this, and the reason that I kind of came to this workshop as a concept and as an idea is because I am someone who is extremely cerebral. It's not always to my benefit, right? But I find that when I open myself up to other things around me and take myself out of my own experience and recognize myself in the context of the grand scheme, it's much more helpful for me to actually get to the core of what it is that I'm trying to articulate, whether that be in conversation, whether that be in writing, however, right? Because sometimes, especially when it comes to writing, we're stuck up here. And so it's like, but my experiences that I'm trying to articulate are not strictly in my mind. They're in the material world. They're outside of me. They're in relation to others, right? All of these conceptual, structural things continuing from a very basic standpoint. What you're gonna need today is whatever you usually write with, an additional web browser. So either another tab, like on your like tablet or desktop or whatever you're using, or you can even use the web browser on your phone if that's a lot easier. Me personally, for these types of things, I like to use my phone web browser so that I'm kind of like, you know, able to kind of see what's happening, but whatever works better for you. And the voice note app on your phone. So most phones have a installed voice note app, whether you have an Apple, you have Android, whatever. We were going to be using that at some point today. So to get into the writing access, or like aspect, I should say, utilizing archetype. So there's many definitions of archetype across like all types of things. To zero in, the one that we're going to be working with today, according to Wikipedia, this lovely, you know, lovely Wikipedia, a constantly recurring symbol or motif in literature, painting, or mythology. This definition refers to the recurrence of characters or ideas sharing similar traits throughout various seemingly unrelated cases in classic storytelling, media, etc. So archetype as it functions is something that reflects kind of the roles that we play in society, right? And obviously our lives are much more nuanced than that. Our present is much more nuanced than just like the fool, right? All these other things. But how do we play with archetype in our understanding of archetype to kind of relate to ourselves in the context of the grand scheme, in the context of the system that we exist in? And how does it help us define kind of where we're at, right? Again, all very abstract. I recognize that. We're getting specific now. We love that. So this idea, right? Archetype of self-interpretation utilizing archetype and our knowledge of it as both storytellers and audience. So as people who are here who ostensibly are also writers and are familiar with kind of what these things represent, right? Greater motifs, greater symbols. How we interpret images and symbols tell us about ourselves in a given moment. The methodology that we're going to be utilizing today, and as you saw on the other slide, I had a tarot card up there. We're going to be using just the imagery of tarot cards for fun as a prompt for our first piece of writing. But important to note, as again, my intention is for this to be a toolbox that you're able to take for yourself to utilize in moments where you're, experiencing writer's block. You can literally use anything. So I have a Mewtwo card up there because if you were like, let me go through Pokemon cards right now and, figure out which one is speaking to me, from an archetype standpoint, and how do I interpret that and how do I write about that? You could literally use Rorschach ink blots if you were feeling so inclined. You can use, the body of work of a particular painter that you really, really like, of a particular photographer that you really like. You can go through, your image folder on your phone and look for a specific day where you took, let's say a day that you went to the beach or something, and you go through that folder of images, and you're able to kind of interpret or rather project some type of meaning or symbol onto it, right? It's like, how do you use these concepts of archetype as a jumping off point? So the writing time, we love that. Again, all of these abstract things for us to kind of zero it in a specific practice, right? So it's an interpretation warm-up and like a personal check-in for yourself. So you're going to go to randomtarotcard.com, which I think Julian is going to put in the chat for you to just be able to access from it, and let it generate a single card for you. So you're going to see when you go to the website, it's literally just going to be the card. You click it and it's just going to randomly give you one. Then your ask is to respond to the prompt. What part of this image are you right now? And why are you part of that image? For what reason? What are you identifying with in the image? It's focus less on the literal card interpretation because it is going to have a description of it at the bottom and like what it means in the context of like, tarot symbolism. That can definitely help influence you. If it is helpful for you, utilize it, but don't necessarily feel married to the concept of utilizing it. So it more so what kind of the image evokes for you, if anything. We're at 4:17 right now, so let's give it like 5 minutes or so, right? Yep, and we'll come back at 4:22. So just take some time to kind of, utilize that, look at it a little bit, write just like a random little warm up, identify yourself in it. What part of this image are you right now and why? This moment as we sit here together on this day. So we'll come back at like 4:20, or it's 4:18 now, we'll come back at 4:23. We're at the 2-minute mark, so 2 more minutes. All right, let's start finishing up. Wrap up your last couple thoughts, end of your sentences, all that good stuff. I hope that was generative. That's exciting. We're going to hang on to that because we are going to come back to it as we continue, right? Excellent. Great. So we're going to play a little bit with this concept of a word cloud. You can join using the code. So you see it right up on the top over here. You might see my browser, or rather my cursor, I should say. It says at menti.com, use code, and it has the code up here. I actually should be able to copy it. Matter of fact, let me make sure that it's going to give me a hard time. I'm trying to copy it, but it says it right up here. So you're going to go to menti.com, you're going to put this in, and it's going to give you a word cloud response. Please excuse my cursing, but it's fine. I feel like we're in a moment where I feel as though we're in a moment where things are very difficult and we're all kind of struggling to name what it is that is interacting with us in these really oppressive and really difficult and really harmful ways. So if you had to, you'd be like, you say you got me fucked up. You got me fucked up. What or who in this moment has you fucked up currently? So basically the prompt that you should get, I'm going to make sure that it works on my phone, is going to prompt you to add a couple of words or even I think a little bit of a phrase. If you want to use single words, we love single words. There's no idea of how it should look in terms of your response. So once you join the room, you should be able to feasibly add to it. I'm just making sure from my own phone that it works. And you'll see me saying hello. I'll say something. Yep, beautiful. Came up on my phone, so it should work. It should give you 3 prompts. If you want to add a couple of words to a little phrase, you can do that. And then once you submit, just submit at your leisure, at your comfort, when you feel finished. And you're going to start seeing, the words kind of come up on the cloud. And so everybody else's responses and words and cloud and thing is also going to be relevant. So whenever you feel good, just add to it. We'll see them you'll see them come up on the screen as needed. So I'm just going to add a couple highs, hellos, greetings, so that as an example of how it kind of works. So once we change slides, it should be there, right? So here we go. Hi, hello, greetings. So those are mine, just like as a sample, as a making sure that it is functioning. Interesting. We'll give 4:25. We'll give it like another minute, have folks add to it. Take note of what Take note of what folks are adding. If there's something that stands out to you, if there's something that stands out to you, or something that you resonate with, or something, even if it feels like it exists in like, you know, like in a sort of like, not necessarily opposition in like a combative sense, but in the sense where you're like, oh, I don't really identify with that. That makes me think about that. Whatever sticks out to you for whatever reason it might, make note of it wherever it is that you're doing your writing, even if it's a little note, little scrap, you know. Just have a couple of people's concepts. We got the Supreme Court, child, local legislators. Listen, I live in New York. You know, it is a time. It is a time over here. So I feel you 100%. I say that to say we're out. Just keep as needed responding. And if there's something in particular that sticks out to you that you resonate with, that you're like, oh my God, you know what? I was thinking about this thing in this particular moment, but this person also brought up something else that I am navigating and dealing with. I actually think that I want to, again, make note of what you see. Folks seem to still be adding. So we'll give it a little more. We'll give it until 428. Conviction overturn, self-doubt, family tension. Oh, I didn't even know that about Weinstein, child. I haven't seen that at all today. What a mess. Supreme Court, death, moving, shame, the poem regret, all of these things. Absolutely. So folks keep adding, and then 428 rather, I'll change the slide. Again, make note of what it is that you're seeing. Make note of what it is that you're navigating. Full phrase will pop up as a single entry. Great, so I'm going to switch this. Again, make note of what else. Next slide. This is from a deck of cards, actually, that I have here that I love. I used to use these with my high school students. I don't know if you can buy them anymore, but I want to show them to you because I love them so much. It is called A Harvest of Survival, an affirmation deck inspired by Octavia Butler. I'm a huge Octavia Butler fan. She influences a lot of my thinking and my writing, and a lot of these cards kind of have prompts from different books of hers or books influenced by her writing. And so this is from this card. This particular question, I should say, is from a card in this deck, so I cannot take full credit for it, but it was always one that I found was the most generative. So again, what are you pretending not to know, beloved? Actually, let me find the card for you because it has a quote. It has a quote from one of her books, I believe, that has a fairly relevant quote, and we'll see if, wasn't planning on reading it, but we'll see if it's and you know, submit as I speak. Continue to do that simultaneously, because I feel like it has a quote that's super relevant. I'm not sure if it's one of her particular quotes or if it is someone who has a piece of writing. Ooh, okay, yes, actually, and it's from The Parable of the Talents, which, if we know anything about the Parable series, that is a very specific series of stories that speaks to a lot of what it is that we're navigating right now. The Talents is the sequel. The quote here, relevant to what a lot of, and this is funny because I was going to use the question, but then I was like, you know what? I'm at my desk. It's here. I have the cards in the drawer. The quote, extremely relevant to many folks' responses to the last question. So from Parable of Talents, beware, ignorance protects itself. Ignorance promotes suspicion. Suspicion engenders fear. Fear quails, irrational and blind, or fear looms, defiant and closed. Blind, closed, suspicious, afraid, ignorance protects itself, and protected, ignorance grows. I had no intention of reading that, but I was like, I have the cards actually. What quote is on this card with this question that says it? What are you pretending not to know, beloved? Right at the bottom. I'll read the quote again, and as I read it, folks, please feel free to start adding your answers to this cloud. I think it should still be the same room question. Yeah, because I'm getting it on my phone. Just follow it along to make sure it works. But feel free to, you know, add your responses. I'll read it one more time. Beware, ignorance protects itself. Ignorance promotes suspicion. Suspicion engenders fear. Fear quails, irrational and blind, or fear looms, defiant and closed, blind, closed, suspicious, afraid. Ignorance protects itself, and protected ignorance grows. So as we go, add your responses to that. And similar to last time, as you're seeing other folks' responses come up, take note of ones that resonate with you in one respect or another, however you interpret that to mean, whatever that means for you. The intention of this to kind of speak to the communal aspect of writing also, right? So if we're talking about all the ways that writing is kind of gatekept and not meant to be, writing's kind of gatekept or expected to be a singularly intellectual endeavor, something that a person does with the might of their own mind by themselves. What does it look like to write in conversation with other people? What does it look like to be inspired by the people around you and the things that they say? I'm going to read you a note that I made for myself. Also, one of my best friends, their birthday was this Sunday. And I have it right here. It says quotes from Blue. My friend's name is Blue. On their 30th birthday. 2 quotes. I didn't want chivalry to go away. I just didn't want it to be gendered. Second, I thought it would be more like dominoes shuffling, but it's more like tectonic plates. I share that because this concept of communal writing, this concept of ideas not existing, right? We're trying to get out of here. And I say this as an extremely cerebral person, not existing solely here, but existing in relation to the world that we're in, right? And using that, being in conversation with one another, looks to me as though the answer is the answer. So that's fine. If we want to make note of that and use that, we can use that. So I'm going to continue. Great. So recording time. Excellent. We love this. So choose a grouping of words or phrases. So the ones that you made note of in the last 2 clouds, submitted by someone else. It can be the ones that you submitted, but ideally just so that it exists kind of in conversation with what else is going on in the room. Submitted by someone else from the cloud that resonate with you. Then mute yourself, but most of you are muted already. But if you would like to turn off your camera in response, that's cool too. Record yourself on your voice note app as you speak your responses out loud. So just kind of what are your initial thoughts, right? And this is kind of where the theatrical aspect of it comes in. And this is me as like a theater person recognizing that this might be a lot easier for me to just, I mean, I'm here blabbing, you know? So I recognize that this might be a little easier for me, but how do we get into our voice and what does our voice reveal to us from a writing standpoint that we might not, conclusions that we might not necessarily come to if we were strictly writing, right? Like on a, you know, on a laptop or via notebook and notepad and pen, all those good things. What does that evoke? So essentially, I'm going to give, it's 4:34 right now. I'm going to give you 10 minutes. So until 4:44, you don't have to utilize the entire time. It's mostly just so that there's a bump at the beginning and the end. If you sort of have a little stop start kind of situation, if you, you know, take a little bit more time, if you want to start again, there's a little bit more space there. It doesn't have to be a full 10 minutes, of course, but just so that there's a little bit of room for you to kind of play with. So we'll come back at 4:44. Just record your response, record what you're thinking about in relation to all of these things, right? On your notes app when you can, or your voice note app, I should say. Someone asked also if we can see the first slide of answers again, so I will. It should still come up. The answer, so this was the second response here. If folks have it up on their screen. Okay, so this is the response to the second one. Myself, bored with my life. The answer, I am in avoidance. Boredom is a privilege. So since you already know that you're kind of, you know, recording, I'm gonna I'll continuously switch between these 2 slides so that you can see what it is if you're looking at it, and I will be on mute. I will allow you your space to continue recording. We're at the 2-minute mark. 2 more minutes. All right, and start wrapping up. Last couple of thoughts, ending of whatever trajectory you are. Great. Love that. Cool. I also hope that was generative. Next up, because we have about 16 minutes total. So this is writing time. Love that. That's why we're here. So now listen back to parts of your response, transcribe parts of it. It doesn't have to be the entire thing, because I know for a fact that when I utilize audio journaling, a lot of it is like and restarts and being like, that's not what I meant, that type of thing, right? So of course, not verbatim transcription, but in the sense of what sticks out to you. What couple of things, when you listen to what it is that you said, do you go, actually, yes, I think that that's the point. I think that's what I'm trying to get at. I think that's what I want to talk about. Transcribe parts of that, combine that with what was generated by the tarot archetype warm-up. So the first thing that we wrote in response to being like, in response to the tarot card, was what part of this image are you today? So part of that response, blended, combined with, mixed with transcriptions of the recording that you just made. Also totally fine if you're like, actually, I really just like my archetype warm-up. I'm going to continue that. Love that. Excellent. Great. You can do that. If you're like, actually, I actually really like this one part of my recording and I would like to continue on that idea, you can also do that. That's great. If this has evoked something completely different for you that you want to start, I'm absolutely here for that as well. But starting point, good place to start. Combine that transcription with the initial response to the first prompt. We're at 4:46 right now, so we'll give you until, we might be cutting it a little close, but 4:56, so another 10 minutes to kind of write that. And then in those last couple of minutes, we'll regroup. If folks are feeling motivated to want to share pieces of what they've written, that'll be great. And there's going to be a couple of questions at the end for us to just kind of share if we would like to. So 4:46 right now, we'll come back at 4:56. All right, folks, we're at 4:54, 2-minute mark. All right, so finish up last thoughts if you haven't. We will slowly be regrouping, gathering, all that good stuff. So with the last couple of minutes that we have, I would really like a little share, a little check-in. If you'd like to share pieces of what you've written, I would love to hear it. If you are not, no pressure, because again, part of what we're trying to impart is this idea of like, if something is just for you, it is just for you, and that is okay. And what it does for you is what makes its value inherent, right? But if you would like to share parts of what you've written, please go ahead. 2 questions that if folks really do feel motivated to answer, I would love to hear. What do you feel like you're walking away with? And what role do you feel like writing has in your personal expression? You can, unmute and speak. You can add it to the chat and I will read it out loud. That's cool. Other 2 questions to consider, but that you don't necessarily have to answer. What obligations do you think writers have to others and to the societies and the worlds that they live in? And how does understanding our place in the big picture, right? So this kind of big picture thinking and then bringing it right back in. How does understanding our place in the big picture help influence the actions we take? If we understand ourselves in the context of the grand scheme, if we know what piece we are, right? If we define what piece we are, what does that influence in terms of how we move and what we attempt to respond to and influence? Those are bigger questions that you can ask yourself in the time. If you want to answer now, you can. But I'd love to hear some feedback, love to hear thoughts, love to hear pieces of writing. I'll open the floor. You can type in the chat, you can unmute, all that good stuff.
I can share.
Okay, cool. Thank you. I'll mute myself.
I'm Anjali, and Jackie, thank you for walking us through this. So what am I walking away with? I've had a really hard time just sitting down to write and like be unashamed about it or without second guessing myself or trying to figure out what to write about. It just stops me from journaling. And these prompts and the communal writing, what I'm walking away with is just the next time I sit down, even though I'll be alone writing, I won't feel as alone and I'll just do it. And then I can use these prompts again. I really like them. On the tarot, I picked the Hermit, and it's like a guy with a robe and he's shining a light on his path and like looking down. And that was an interesting card because I feel like I'm doing that with myself right now, just trying to drown out all the noise that's around me and focus on my path and I have a lot of uncertainty in front of me right now. And so I just wrote about that, and like the journey, I don't know where I'm going to end up, but the journey matters, the day-to-day moment, and like my joy matters. So that's what I got out of that. And it's a nice thing to walk away with. So thank you.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing. I'm glad to hear it. I put it in the chat too, but the Hermit is one of my favorites personally. I was like, same. I love the Hermit. That's very exciting. Thank you for sharing. I appreciate it. Would anyone else like to share? About a minute-ish or so. You can, again, add things to the chat.
I thought the talking into the voice notes was harder than I expected it to be. And I was kind of like afraid to say some things out loud and to have them recorded. So it took me a couple of tries of hitting delete and restart. And then finally I was just like, oh, fuck it. I'm just going to go for it. But it was hard to listen back to. So that was very, that whole process has given me something to reflect on for sure going forward. So thank you for that. Oh, and my card, my random card
Yes.
was the Fool, and he's so carefree and lighthearted, and he's out in nature with animals, and I was like, that's what I aspire to. So that was pretty cool also.
One of my favorite things about the Fool is also the sort of symbolism and where it represents in terms of the entire journey, right? So the Fool is the start, and the Fool is like, I don't know where I'm going, but it's somewhere, you know? And sometimes that's a great place to be in, right? So it's not always, the Fool is always, you know, the Fool is also, I think, one of my favorite things about it from an interpretive and literally just an imagery standpoint, right? And less about like the esoteric like interpretations of what it means, but literally just from the picture standpoint, the dog is making sure that he's not bumping into things. He's not necessarily paying attention, but there's something there that's like, I got you, don't worry, we'll be fine, it's okay, you know, which I think is one of my favorite things from an imagery standpoint. That's very good to hear. And also that's what I kind of like about the audio aspect of it also, is because it does kind of, and thank you for sharing that, because it also, it kind of gets to, I think the point of like what I'm trying to bring up too, is this idea that certain aspects of how we express ourselves articulate themselves differently. I speak much differently as a speaker than I do as a writer. And so depending on what mode I'm in, it's bringing me new ideas, right? And I'm honestly very glad to hear that you did keep trying, even though at first you were kind of like, I don't know about this, you know, because I am a stop, start, delete kind of person also. So I'm really glad to hear that you followed through on that. Thank you for sharing. Anyone else? Anyone else would like to share anything? If not, I feel really comfortable with closing out. Julian, if you would like to take it away again.
Awesome. Thank you again to Jackie and to everyone who participated in today's session. I'm about to share a few links in the chat, so take a second and copy those down or open them up, whatever you got to do. There's one more class this semester. It's still got room for enrollment. I think it's a flash fiction class. We've also got more Thursdays on the Stoop like this one. Next week is Reduce, Reuse, Recycle, a revision workshop with Allison Lubar. That's going to be a hot one. You gotta check it out. Also, there's a feedback survey. You want to tell Jackie what a great job they did? Please fill that out. We really value your input. It also includes some questions that help us win grants, which are helpful. And last but not least, if you want to make a donation to Blue Stoop, we'll never say no. So thank you again for being here. Copy those links down. Big round of applause for Jackie, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you for being here, everyone. I appreciate it.